Just assume you're going to stop me when you want me to stop.
That's perfect. Thanks, Mike. That's really nice. It's a really way to open this. So, welcome everybody. Welcome to Engage Winona's second Civic Saturday, which is just an experiment in motion. This is just this kind of this occasional series we've designed to bring folks together during difficult times to just try and give us all a bit of a tailwind of hope and energy and connection. And so we have some music, some poetry, some readings and talks in the first half, and then the second half we'll have folks in groups in conversation. And just to get started, I want folks just to take a second to sit back, settle into this space. You can put your feet up or your feet down, depending on how it's feeling for you. Take a breath. Take another breath. Just kind of breathe in. Breathe out. Leave everything that you brought in here kind of behind there, because it'll be there on the other end of this. Just kind of tune into your jaw. Unclench it if it's clenched. Mine often is. Check in with your shoulders. Kind of push them up, back, and down. Relax. Take a breath in. Big breath out. You're on mute, so you can breathe right into the microphone. I'm just appreciative folks are here today. Today being what it is, or a few days before the election, it's also it's a holiday for some. It's a fun day for others, for Halloween. Just to be here between now and noon, just to connect with each other. And so what I'd like to do now is just start right away with we have a couple of featured guests today. We have Mike Munson playing music and Maya Williams sharing poetry and spoken word. I want to give a chance to feature each of them before we do anything else. So Maya, I'll turn it to you to introduce yourself, talk about your work, or anything you want to share, and then a poem for us. And then Mike, we'll go right to you.
Okay, hi, thank you. Thank you so much, Brian. So, misnomer, there will be no poems today, but mainly because most of what I do lately is lyrical essay. So, but, definitions, semantics, or whatever. So the first piece I'm going to do, I wrote 4 years ago like the week after the last election happened. So, and then the piece I'll read next, in the next break, will be the piece I'm working on now. So they're like bookends, you can imagine. And this one is basically about my daughter and I when we went to Standing Rock in 2016. Okay. It's called We Fight Joyfully. Can everyone hear me? Am I loud enough? All right, cool. It's a new laptop. Okay. A couple of weeks ago, my 9-year-old daughter and I were in Standing Rock, North Dakota, fighting against the Dakota Access Pipeline that threatens to build an oil pipeline underneath the Missouri River and other central waterways. There are thousands of people camping in the cold North Dakota nights in order to stop a pipeline that threatens the water of 18 million people. The odds were never in the favor of the native folk who have been protecting our water for months. Now the odds are much worse against the water protectors. I was standing in the front of the sacred fire with Black and Indigenous folk at the main camp before sunrise, with hundreds of people wrapped in down and wool coats, praying together, gathering strength. As the day became light, most of the warriors got into trucks and cars and drove to front lines of the pipeline and faced armed police in military riot gear. They prayed loudly on the land for their future and their ancestors they are protecting, for the warriors who were imprisoned by the North Dakota police at that moment, for all of us. In moments of deep existential crisis, many of us feel so deeply that we cannot write. Instead, we are called to act, to go into the neighborhoods, the streets, to demand that anything that stands in the way of our survival, our children's, our community's survival must fall. In these times of political change, all I can tell you is that human beings are miraculous. Change happens slowly, slowly, then all at once. In Standing Rock, people give their very skin and bone to live on the land with dignity and purpose. After returning from Standing Rock, people questioned if I should have brought my daughters so close to the protests, to the front lines, the police blockades, the frenzied chaos. I tell them about the multi-tent Lakota homeschool that is set up at the center of main camp, how grateful the elders were to see children playing soccer in the sun. What does safety look like for people who look like us, brown and Black girls living on the edges and the center of empire? I can't tell you how to pick yourself up from despair. I can't assure you that everything is going to be okay. All I can tell you is that empire will eventually destroy everything you love unless we fight it. It has always been Black, Indigenous mamas who do the work of affirming life, of taking care of us all, creating new ecologies, ensuring our survival. Generation into generation, we have always believed that the work of life is more important than the luxury of desperation. Revolution happens slowly, slowly, and then all at once. This is what I've whispered to my daughter since she was in utero. I cannot console people who desperately believe, against all evidence to the contrary, that peaceful, nonviolent revolution is possible in the midst of this empire. For those of us who have fought on the edges and at the center against the rapacious, bullying forces that are intent on destroying everything we hold dear, peaceful revolution sounds like Disney fairy tales. We live in Grimm's book of frightened children and Bluebeard's secret rooms. All I can tell you is that we have always fought, using prayer as a weapon, protecting water with chants, bodies, visions, with strategy, and with joy. This is what I tell my daughter. We fight joyfully, yes, but we fight. Thank you.
Thanks, Maya. And Mike, I'll turn it to you.
Great. I've been playing a lot of. I haven't been playing many songs lately, but I've been playing a lot of guitar. If that makes any sense. Playing a lot of meditations on some of my older music and letting it change a little bit. So I guess here's what Rose Hill sounds like today.
Woo!
Yeah, and folks are welcome to come off mute and clap and cheer. Yeah, thanks Tesla for modeling that.
Of course.
Thanks, Mike. And thank you to Mike and Maya for being here. This Civic Saturday event these have been fairly organic, and these we don't have put a ton of kind of deep planning into them. We kind of host them as they feel right to host. So I really appreciate both of you being here, and I appreciate our facilitators being here. What I'd like to do just to give us more time in our breakout room conversations and keep focus on that is just to roll right along into kind of just keep the mood and the flow going with the sharing. So I'd like to move just right into the readings, and then I'll have a short talk, and then we'll go into breakout rooms for conversations. So what I'd like to do then is turn it to. I need to pull up my own flow, but I think this is time for Molly in the first reading.
Okay. I'll see if I can. I'm very moved by the presence of all of you. The children are a beautiful reminder, like, oh, look, life is still going on, and there's lots of beauty here, and there are really, really awesome people. So I'm just feeling really, I don't know, appreciative and moved by all of your presence and the poem or the essay, the music. So thank you. All right, center. This is probably another thing that's going to make me cry, but this is a writing by Margaret Bloomstein, and it is called, and I hope I pronounce it correctly, it's called Tikkun Olam and the Legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah, and Tikkun Olam. And I gave this to Molly at about 10 after 10 this morning. so thank you for jumping in. I said, would you like to read a reading with new words that you've never experienced before? And she said, sure. So thank you.
Yeah.
Tikkun Olam.
Tikkun Olam. Judaism teaches the concept of Tikkun Olam, literally repair the world. And I considered this principle as I tried to reconcile the celebration of Rosh Hashanah with Friday's devastating news. At 87, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg had finished her work in this world to which she had given so much. Her death was not a surprise, but still a heartbreaking shock in a year of so much loss and shock. Her work was done, but ours is not. In calling us to repair the world, Tikkun Olam holds as fact that the world is a broken place. The Talmud expounds on this concept. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. The world is a broken place. We all bear the responsibility to heal it. And just because you cannot do everything does not mean you are freed from the obligation of trying. The welfare of others, our responsibility. The well-being of our environment, our responsibility. Equitable policies and laws that ensure justice for others, regardless of gender, race, sex, origin, or wealth, our responsibility. Few people have embraced these responsibilities with the rigor of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Her commitment is informed both by Judaism and reason. To enjoy a society that uplifts everyone, you must do the work to uplift everyone. That call to justice gains strength with the invocation, may her memory be a blessing. Writer Molly Conway explored the meaning of this concept eloquently. When we say, may her memory be a blessing, the blessing we speak of is not, may we remember her fondly, or may her memory be a blessing to us. The blessing implied in this is this, may you be like Ruth. Jewish thought teaches us that when a person dies, it is up to those who bear her memory to keep her goodness alive. We do this by remembering her. We do this by speaking her name. We do this by carrying on her legacy. We do this by continuing to pursue justice, righteousness, sustainability. May RBG rest in peace. May her memory bless us and motivate us as we embrace her energy to do the work, our responsibility, to ensure a just society for all. RBG worked to build a more just community. We are her legacy. We who protest, write letters, donate, exercise our rights, and cast a ballot. When we say, may her memory be a blessing, may our actions be blessed and motivated by her memory. It is a broken world, and we are responsible for working to fix it. Onward. I did it.
Thank you.
Apologies for mispronouncing any of the words that are unfamiliar in my mouth.
No, and thanks for jumping in to share that. I think the words are unfamiliar. I think that the context is global and the intent is pure. What I'd like to do, so Kendra, I will turn to you. We'll kind of move through our. I'll turn to you, Kendra, and then I'll share a short talk, and then we'll go into our conversations.
Sounds good. I had to take deep breaths too, Molly. Thanks. But this is a joyous poem that, sometimes things come across your social media feed that you're not expecting. And I'd been reading I was reading a lot of RBG's words this week, trying to find the right reading. And then this came across, it was a poem I had not seen before, across the social media feed. I don't even remember where, but it seemed like the right choice. So it ties in with so many of the things that have already been brought up. So, okay, deep breath. And my cat is next to me. For those of you that I told you she's trained to show up for Zooms. There she is. Okay, this is called Election by Alfred Lamont. I voted. I voted for the rainbow. I voted for the cry of a loon. I voted for my grandfather's bones that feed beetles now. I voted for a singing brook that sparkles underneath a North Dakota bean field. I voted for salty air through which the whimbrel flies south along the shores of 2 continents. I voted for melting snow that returns to the wellspring of darkness where the sky is born from the earth. I voted for demonic mushrooms on the loam and the old democracy of worms. I voted for the wordless treaty that cannot be broken by white men or brown, because it is made of star semen, thistle sap, hieroglyphs of the weevil in prairie oak. I voted for the local, the small, the brim that does not spill over, the abolition of waste, the luxury of enough. I voted for the commonwealth of the ancient forest, a larva for every beak, a wing-tinted flower for every moth's disguise, a well-fed mammal's corpse for every colony of maggots. I voted for open borders between birth and death. I voted on the ballot of a fallen leaf of sycamore that cannot be erased, for it becomes the dust and rain, and then a tree again. I voted for more fallow time to cultivate wildflowers, more recess in schools to cultivate play, more leisure, tax-free, more space between days. I voted to increase the profit of evening silence and the price of a thrush song. I voted for 10 million stars in your next inhalation. I knew I couldn't get through the last line. I practiced it. I voted for 10 million stars in your next inhalation. I still can't do it. But I put the poem in the chat so you can read it yourself.
No, thanks, Kendra and Molly. That was beautiful. You did do it. You totally did it. So even though you think you didn't, you did, which I think may, if anything, be the theme of our morning together. Even when you think you're not doing it, you're actually doing it. And you're doing it really wonderfully. So, thanks for sharing that, and thanks for being here the way you are, everyone, with kids in the room, with cats crawling all over us, with like feeling ungrounded and unbounded and unsure of what comes next. You're here, and you're here the way you wanted to show up, and that's really amazing. So thank you, Kendra and Molly, both for participating and for modeling that. What I would like to do is share a talk that I wrote. This gathering is part of this Civic seminary group that I'm a part of. So there are folks like this doing these events all over the country, in big cities, really tiny towns, in New York City, and towns of 500 people. It's this vision of kind of training and empowering folks to host events just like this, to lift up really awesome musicians and writers and activists and thinkers and beers and feelers and community, and then to provide folks with, hopefully, the way we framed this when we started, which is just a little bit of tailwind. This is not the everything. This can't provide it all, but hopefully it just gives a little bit. So I'm going to share this talk, and then in the second half, we'll move folks into small conversation groups. And just so you have the questions as you're thinking about them, I'm going to put them in the chat too. So thank you for being here. And I will start, which really starts in the same place. So all the spaces I've been in these last weeks, everybody has been using these battery analogies to describe themselves. Drained, weak, dead, 20%, 10%, can't get it to turn on. So this morning is for all of you operating at whatever percentage you have left, to offer care, a small gift of a power bank or a sunlit panel to last long enough to at least help you remember where you lost your charger and get things plugged in. So what does care mean? We framed this whole event around this word care. What does it mean to care for yourself, your neighbors, your community in times like these? So care as a noun isn't a particularly warm notion. It means, in one definition, suffering of mind. But care as a verb means alleviating suffering through action. So care is both suffering and alleviating suffering. And I'm really interested in talking about care as action. Care is awareness of what needs to be done to alleviate suffering and doing it. The courage to take on the things you've been avoiding, to step into unknown and challenging spaces, even like this one here today, both inside yourself and in community. Care means showing up, even and especially when showing up is the hardest thing to do. And if this idea of care sounds like hard work that's just going to drain your battery more, I want to help you reframe that thinking. Care is hard work, but it's the only kind of work that actually gets at what's running in the background and zapping your charge, all of these anxieties, fears, apprehensions you can't quite see or grasp. And on the other side of care is deep peace, the quiet calming of the mind and heart, resting in the knowledge and feeling of doing the right work, the right thing with the right intention, regardless of outcome. Tikkun olam, to repair the world. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. So I want to talk just briefly about what care looks like in three ways: caring for self, caring for neighbors, and caring for community, which are these three areas here and in a lot of places that are really badly in need of healing and repair. So the first, caring for self, believing you matter. And I start here because human transformation is what makes social transformation possible. In human transformation, starting with this deep down, nobody can take it from you belief that you matter, that you are enough. That care for self really means knowing and living this, that you do not need to earn anything, accomplish anything, win anything, achieve anything. You have an inherent value and worth, that your specialness is already there within you, that you matter. And the eyes wide open reflection on this is that some, a lot more than others, have to dig deep, really deep, to find this place of mattering because of such ceaseless direct and violent action to take it from them. And we don't do nearly enough to appreciate those who are forced to do this work of knowing they matter. So I wanted to take a moment to thank all of you for doing that work, that I see you, and that your work, like Tikkun Olam, repairs us all. You matter, a mantra worthy of repeating to yourself throughout the day, especially as you're called to show up this week, the week after, next month. And here's what it sounds like in the first person for you. I matter, my voice matters, my heart matters, my purpose matters, my work matters, and I am enough. So I'm going to repeat these, and if this is the first time for you saying them, it's going to feel a little strange, but maybe just to kind of have them, just say them inside your head along together. I matter, my voice matters, my heart matters, my purpose matters, my work matters, I am enough. In Engage Winona, we often lift up this quote from Adrienne Marie Brown, a writer and activist and organizer in Detroit. A million beautiful things. Those are just kind of three labels, because it's really core to our work. And if you've ever received a gratitude card from us, you'll know this quote. And if you haven't, we're going to give you a chance to do that at the end of our event. And the quote is, "Your existence, who and how you are, is in and of itself a contribution to the people and place around you." Your existence is the contribution. 2 is caring for neighbors. So if caring for self is you matter, what does caring for neighbors look like? And I want to voice what you're all thinking and what I was thinking when I was like slogging through this, trying to find some one word that made sense. That in a time when the stories we tell ourselves about our neighbors are fixated on the signs these days that they have in their front lawns and the flags, how is this possible? And how is this possible when we know we're not talking really about politics, right? But we're talking about values, immorality, and compassion, and dignity, and human rights. But it raises this question that we're forced to reckon with now and have for a long time and will, that as we live in community, can we disagree on a deep level and still care for each other? And so I think often of this Paul Wellstone quote, "We all do better when we all do better." On one level, it's a rallying cry for equitable political action, a litmus test for legislation. On another, it's a philosophy of care. So when I say neighbor, I don't literally mean your next door neighbor, although I could. And in Molly and our cases, I think we both mean our next door neighbors. Neighbor is an awareness of membership in a larger ecosystem of thought and energy and experience. We don't live in this landscape alone, independent, unaffected by the thoughts, emotions, and actions of others. That our communities are deeply interdependent, our individual lives richly connected. And to me, embodying this philosophy means caring for neighbors by humanizing them. It was hard before, and maybe it's never been harder now. I mean, amid everything that emerges when people express what they have the privilege to call opinions, when they're really talking about others' rights. Amid all of it, this specter of COVID we're living in, the reason we're here, kind of looking at each other's digital representation of faces, the way it makes us even more suspicious of each other than we may have already been. We duck and weave in grocery stores and sidewalks. And even when the smiles are there, missing them, mishearing these mask muffled words of welcome. And where we once turned to stories to narrate these humanizing connections for us, this year has really laid bare, I know for me, the complexity of our stories and experiences, and the fact that in most cases, our stories and lived experiences are very much not shared. And as capable as they once were of tying us together, today are just as equally pulling us apart, these narratives of disharmony and disunion. But I want to make the point that awareness of this complexity is actually progress. it relieves us of having to seek this superficial commonality, like we both like this thing, or compartmentalizing. As I was driving in a car with my brother last week, and we rode past one of his neighbor's house, and he said, "Boy, I can't stand those signs they put in their lawn, but I guess they look like they're good at gardening." As he was trying to like grasp for this thing to cling to, that we can finally shelve this cute but harmful platitude that we always have more in common than we have in differences. That instead we can show up and go straight in and celebrate this richness of diversity that really what weaves and binds our connected threads. And accept that it's possible to care for someone, even if we disagree with them, even if we dislike them, and even if we don't connect even on these deep levels. That it's just both and, that caring for neighbors mean that we can actually both fight and love at the same time. That we can call out injustice, even when our neighbors or our loved ones are the agents of that injustice. And that we can do that without absenting, without denying humanity, without sacrificing our dignity. And in many ways, even more fiercely calling out their injustice while also calling them in to this circle of shared experience. That we all do better when we all do better. And then finally, this idea of caring for community. So bad news and good news, at least from my experience. The bad news is that no one is coming to save us. But the good news, and it's really good news, is that we are the ones we've been waiting for. That no one else is coming to save us. It's us here in this room and the folks surrounded us and those in our neighborhoods. That we are the ones we've been waiting for. That our democracy, our civic life, our purpose starts right here, in our community, in our backyard, in our homes, in our hearts. Not something that's out there in Facebook, in Washington, but something we can control and influence, which still, even in the 21st century, mostly starts with shared geography. So my question is, how many of you spent, and this is a hypothetical question, you can answer this in your head, how many of you spent at least an hour last week consuming media related to national politics? And I'm not even going to answer this question myself, because it's a lot. 2 hours, 3 hours, more. And then ask yourself, do you feel more in control, more powerful, or just as helpless and overwhelmed? And so what if we pivoted just a little, like as community members here in this one small place together? Like what if for just 1 hour a week, instead of worrying about a situation far outside our control, we devoted that hour to caring for our community through acts of service? That's 4 hours a month, 50 hours a year. And if everyone in Winona did that, the quick math means that we have 1.5 million hours of service each year. So if you close your eyes for just a second and imagine like 1.5 million hours of service put into Winona, like all of the change that we could see happen. And to be clear, I'm not suggesting that the pathway to caring for community is to ignore everything that isn't local, because everything is interconnected. And what happens nationally has very real effects and causes very real harm and deserves our attention and action. That all I'm suggesting is our attention has just been really skewed, especially lately, that if we're spending all of this time and energy caring somewhat sort of non-productively about what's far beyond us, and not enough time caring in a really productive way about what's right in front of us. And so even though we're looking around at our virtual screens, just imagining this shared geography and landscape we're in, these valleys and bluffs, this river, ourselves, our neighbors, our community, Winona. And what would this community look like if we really focused our care and attention here for just 1 hour a week? And really believe this idea that we are the ones that we've been waiting for. So to close that, just a quick call to action. So this through line of each of these arenas of self, like how do you care for self? How do you care for neighbors, caring for community? Like this, show up, reach in, reach out, rest, and repeat. Show up, getting present and ready for yourself and others, just like showing up today, how you all did, and are, and continue to be. And then first that reaching in and accessing that courage and that kindness and the patience and the grace, the spirit, the reason you're doing the work you do. And then reaching out, only after reaching in, to your neighbors, to your community, with time, with energy, presence. Resting, that this work is really hard. So you take care of yourself and then repeat. And the really critical thing of not skipping that fourth step, or it gets really hard to repeat, that this work is really heavy lifting. And in weight training, as some of you know, and many of you know in this room here today, like, you don't just stand there holding the weights after the set. You put them down, you rest, and then you pick them back up after you've rested. So, and yet here we are in this heavy lifting of personal and community change, and we just stand there. And I say we, but I mean me. I'm not good at this either. That we stand there holding all of this weight between sets, like we're somehow obligated to hold it all time. And so no wonder we're so sore and so tired and so weary all the time, because we never put down the weight. And again, like I really struggle with this. So to lift the weight, lower the weight, drop it, rest, and then repeat. That is really care, and that's how we get stronger. So caring for self, you matter. Caring for neighbors, believing that we all do better when we all do better. And caring for community, and really believing that we are the ones that we've been waiting for. So show up, reach in, reach out, rest, the important part, and then repeat. Thank you. So care. So as we're framing this around care, you've gotten to experience a lot of folks kind of talking and sharing to you. Now's the opportunity to connect with each other. Thank you, everyone, for engaging in that. We had a really great, I got to participate for the first time. I kind of existed in the vacuum last time of the emptiness of hoping everybody was having a good time connecting. What I would like to do now to close together is to turn it to Maya first to share some words, and then turn it to Mike for a song, and then we'll close together and also with a brief call to action. So I'll turn it back over to you, Maya.
Thank you. Hi. So like I said before, the thing I read before was from 4 years ago, and this one I guess is very current, which means it's very fresh, which means it's not finished. It's very fresh, as in I was editing it this morning for this. And I guess the only thing I would say, it's in pieces. I only say that because I'm working on a much longer piece, and so this is a pieces out of that. So it sort of flows a little bit differently than. Right. Oh, the last thing I remember. A lyrical essay is basically an essay that uses a lot of poetry elements, or at times a lyrical essay is considered to be a poem that uses a lot of like prose elements. I just realized I made the category without defining it, so like a lot of my work uses the two of them together. That's why they're okay. I do the same things in every place. My work is very simple. I go through the day, walking from place to place, and I write about that walk. I am struck over and over again by how much I try to do normal things. Eat dinner, watch the news, brush my teeth, read a book in the midst of the apocalypse, the falling of the U.S. empire, a pandemic, a grand jury that refuses to charge Breonna Taylor's murderers for killing her in her sleep. All I can do is write about it. What do you do when violence is on your doorstep every morning? You sing the blues. I want to write about the chickens coming home to roost, and Malcolm X's famous speech in response to the assassination of JFK, and about the chickens in my backyard, and about the president's infection with COVID-19, and about making home. An allusion to the dinosaurs from whom chickens supposedly evolved descended. Dinosaurs with feathers, and how birds are now tiny dinosaurs. How dinosaurs didn't look like the reptilian monsters in movies and science books, but instead I imagine they looked like large, colorful birds. A world full of big birds, yellow and red, black and blue feathers, kind-hearted and bumbling and full of song. I want to write about the monsters that haunt me still. Nowadays, I imagine the monsters like giant chickens, ravens, bluebirds, eagles, and hawks. A couple of years ago, in the late October autumn, a hawk was hanging out in my backyard, perched on a fence post, and then turned its head 180 degrees and stared at me through my bedroom window. It felt like it was looking into the past and future simultaneously, a warning, a quiet alarm, and then it flew away. Later, I went outside to check on the chickens. Now that the hawks were around, I thought maybe they could carry off a chicken in its claw. We had killed the roosters the year before, and now the trees were bare and the wind was cold when it blew in the mornings. The hawks could be looking for easy prey in these darkening days, but the chickens were safe. I was going to write about how when the chickens died unexpectedly, I wondered if they were a sacrifice, a taking, a rebalancing, a death for a love. They say to hang material, reflective material, in order to keep the hawks away, like old CDs and mirrors and reflective tape. I want to write about the connections between the idea of a predator looking in the mirror and being scared away by his own reflection, or even the threat that if he gets too close, he will have to see himself as himself in the shine of metal and light. I want to say something about how maybe this is a moment in time when we have shown a reflection on the predators, how this virus seems to have revealed the weakened connections, the cracks in the foundation, the ways that we take and take and take without giving, a reflection on who is truly essential and who is asked to sacrifice in order for our world to keep moving. How George Floyd made white America take a look in the mirror for almost 9 minutes, and a lot of them were horrified, and a lot of them were titillated, and that folks probably would not have seen that reflection quite so clear if so many of them had not been home on their laptops, working or unemployed, discovering that their safety was built on grocery store workers and delivery drivers and nurses' aides and childcare providers. And I know that I'm not saying anything new. There is nothing new in a reflection. It is just shinier. The hawks are not the bad guys in this story. I have more in common with them than I do with chickens. I too want to fly over the expanse of the continent, to spread my wings and glide with the wind, to eat warm meat and watch humans do human things. The dinosaurs were also an illusion to the past, to oil, to climate change, to extinction, to humans. We have 2 cats, Tiggy and Popcorn, and we have 3 chickens, 2 white ones and 1 brown in the backyard, named Heather, Heather, and Veronica. These are the new young chickens. 5 years ago, I insisted that we get chickens, and my daughter's father and grandfather spent a few days building a chicken coop in the backyard. They were Bianca and Jack the Skeleton. Bianca was white, and Jack was black and orange. Someday I will write more about these chickens and what it means to eat their eggs and feed them scraps from our meals, and how they give me hope in something strange and sweet. They, I assume, do not know about the apocalypse or the fading population of bees, or how most days I cannot write anything because it all seems so restless and pointless to care when I am just one person, and the world that I fought for and hoped for and put my body on the line for, that world, that future will never be. And I don't know if the world that we are entering is going to be worse, but I damn well know it is not going to be better than the one I imagined I could create from sweat and muscle and work and resilience and trauma. I know I'm supposed to end this with a hopeful note, and please believe me, hope is what I have, what every radical artist has. It is why we say the truth, no matter how much the people in power dislike to face how beautiful the world could be. But instead of hope, I leave you with utter despair, because the best prayers come when we are facing the cross, the ocean, the ships pointing towards the torture chambers of the new world. I don't believe in God, but I do believe in you, and I believe we can make the world as beautiful as all the radical artists have hoped it could be. If I am willing to write in the face of our reflection, and we are willing to look at the monsters that look like us. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. And Mike, I'll turn to you for the song.
Great. Thanks, Maya, for that. Something I'm going to miss this year coming up is election night at Ed's. That's always been a good thing for me personally. It's kind of like I get to go to a party, but I get to be like playing music because I'm really bad at like hanging out at parties, but I really like parties. But it's also a bit more, it's just this solid reminder that no matter what happens, not that it doesn't matter, but the people that are there in that room are just the like immediate reminder that, oh, this is who I'm gonna work with, you know. Like, I'm not really gonna work with the people that are elected to national office, but tonight, you know, I'm gonna get to work with the people that are right there with me at that place, and that was always such a great reminder for me. What I believe, like, what my most important work is, and our most important work is the work that's right here. So I'm gonna miss that, but this is helpful to help me down that road. I've really been not singing at all at home. I've just been playing, and that's been great. I really like that, but some people remind me that that's not probably great. So I'm going to play, as we're approaching daylight savings time and winter, and like the very real winter, and then the metaphorical winter, and all that sort of stuff that we're constantly in. I'm going to play an old spiritual that I found a lot of help. It's helpful to me to play it, and it was helpful to me to listen to it. Other people play it. I first heard a recording by Blind Willie Johnson play it in the 20s, and then Fred McDowell had a recording of it in the 50s, and it seems to exist continually through that. It's a song called "Keep Your Lamps Trimmed and Burning." And the idea that the old songs are still true, and that sometimes even the further we go back, we stretch back that slingshot, and it's not that we're looking back, but like once you let go of that slingshot, that's what propels us to the future. And I find that to be a great reminder for playing some of these old songs, and they've meant different things for different people throughout history. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning down, trimmed and burning down, trimmed and burning now. See what the Lord has done, brother. Don't be worried, don't be worried, don't be worried now. Don't be worried, don't be worried, don't be worried now. See what the Lord has done. Coming soon, almost over. It's almost over. It's almost over now. You know he's working all the time, sister. Don't be worried. Don't be worried. Don't be worried now. You know he's working all the time, elder. Don't be worried. Don't be worried. Don't be worried now. Trimmed and burning in, trimmed and burning now.
Woo!
Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Tesla, for being the cheering squad. This is, Zoom makes that so weird sometimes when you sort of finish something and then there's oh man. So Mike and Maya, I mean, when I reached out to both of you, imagining you and your vision and your energy being a part of this, like I was imagining big things, but power. I was not imagining that, and it was all the much more. So thank you deeply, Mike and Maya, for just bringing this energy to this space. This was amazing. Thank you to everybody for being here and to being part of this work. And to wanting to, Kendra, one of our facilitators, had to leave, but described this as cup filling, and I hope it certainly was for me, and I hope that was for all of you. One thing I want to just before, as you're leaving, I'm going to put a link in the chat. If we were in a shared space together, we would pass out these cards for you to fill out if you were so inclined. It's an opportunity, just as hopefully your cup is filled, as you've heard something that's moved you, to commit yourself to something. And commitment may sound like a big word, but it may just like commit yourself to reminding yourself that you are enough is a big commitment. We're not meaning commit yourself to doing something kind of out there, but just whatever is feeling right in the moment. This is a great opportunity to do that. And then we would love to send you a gratitude card for doing that if you give us your address. That's the only thing we will do with it, is to send you a gratitude card. So that's there in the chat. And other than that, I think just to be in deep appreciation for everyone being here today. We don't know, Civic Saturday is just an occasional thing we pull together as it's feeling like important to do that. We will do it again. We don't know when, but we will be in touch. We amplify it on social media, our email newsletter, and the website, word of mouth. So thanks for being here. Tell your friends. And I think maybe just to close, I mean, again, Mike, Maya, no words, just appreciation. And thank you to our facilitators. And just as and Mike and Maya, as what you were sharing was just sort of moving through me, a couple quick things stuck among all of that wisdom. And one, Mike, our most important work is the work that's right here. And Maya, that saying human beings are miraculous. The change happens slowly, then all at once. To use your words to kind of close our time here together. So thank you for being here. Appreciate the day, appreciate each other. We are here for each other, with each other. We are all doing good work, and we will continue to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Shina.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Molly. Thanks, Maya. Thanks, Mike.